Glenn, Friday's gig at the Universal Amphitheatre was very successful, but it must have been a bit different from the Royal Standard at Deptford.
It certainly is very different from the Royal Standard in Deptford in many ways. Perhaps the most significant is the fact that the Royal Standard in Deptford can't hold 6,000 people. It's, I don't know, actually the approach though is the same, besides the fact that the band had never played down the pub. But I used to be intimidated by larger sorts of shows, but came to the conclusion after playing a few of them that really it's just like playing the pub anyway. It's just, you know, a pub times 10 or 20 or 50 or whatever it is. If you maintain the same attitude, if you can get yourself to feel relaxed and communicate with an audience, I think it's essentially, you can psych yourself into thinking it's the same sort of thing, and that works.
Right. Didn't you play earlier this year with Bowie?
Yeah, we did. We did 4 dates over here in the States, 2 in Philadelphia and 2 in New York, which were like in front of 90,000 people a show, which is very exciting. Great fun.
And again, a bit different from the Royal Standard.
Well, very different again from the Royal Standard. Yeah.
When we first came here, we toured for 2.5 months in a row, and we travelled in a blue Chevy van without any air conditioning in it. Went across the desert, and Miles Copeland, who's our manager, sort of doubled up as a roadie for a while, which was very, very nice.
So what did that mean, that he had to schlep the gear, basically?
Yeah, occasionally I saw him with his naked arms carrying Marshall amplifiers and stuff in and out of gigs, which was, you know, I mean, all credit to him. There isn't a lot of managers that would do that sort of thing.
No.
But then I think we were together at the same point learning a lot of tricks, like how to plug in amplifiers, that sort of thing.
Tune guitars.
Tune guitars, you know.
Explain to me, Chris, the reason for your success over here, given that the band's South London.
I can't really put my finger on it. I know when we first came here, radio play was very strong on the Beatles and the Kinks, and yet to me the Beatles and the Kinks were a really old hat. But they seem to have stuck with them, you know, this British sort of postcard type appearance. And I think I don't know quite what the success, why the success has suddenly come after 10 years of touring here, but it's nice that it's here.
Chris, there's a lot of local name checking that goes on in your songs. Do you think this might be a bit of a problem for the Americans?
Well, in the new single, for instance, we mention Bermondsey and Mill Hill and the Northern Line, which neither of them are on, incidentally. And I don't think many people over here probably understand that sort of link. But then there are a lot of links in American songs that are on British radio that maybe English people don't suss out, as it were.
No.
I mean, there was one instance in a song we had called Goodbye Girl, which a lot of people over here ask me about. There's a line that says, the sunlight on the lino woke me with a shake. A lot of people were convinced that lino was a drug reference, you know, to, say, you know, linoleum, floor covering. So, oh, really, that's what it is.
Chris, what's been the reaction to the new album over here?
Jolly good. It's number 36 in the album chart here, and the single, Hourglass, got to number 15, which is jolly good for us here. And it's got a lot of critical acclaim, and people have been writing very, very good things about it. So.
You've been compared in the press cuttings to Lennon and McCartney. Is that a difficult thing to bear?
Well, when we first read this, it was like, wow, what a thing, you know. All of a sudden, you know, we're being compared with people like Lennon, McCartney and Gilbert and Sullivan and people. And I stopped and looked at it and thought, well, I can't actually see how we're anything like them. And the only thing that could make me think that we possibly were is that there are 2 of them and there are 2 of us. We both felt that we had to sort of come up with the goods because people had said, you know, you're like these people, you're writing great songs. So when you sat down to write a song, you'd think, well, I've reached a certain peak. I've got to keep to that peak. I've got to bounce back up to it. Whereas now, that doesn't bother me. I never, ever think of them. Not from when I played the records, of course.
What was the first thing that happened after the band got back together?
We had a lot of fun. when we were together the first time around, which gradually sort of wound down, and then it stopped being fun for about the last year. I think because we'd done too much work. We'd done 6 years touring and making albums, and we didn't really take enough time off to be able to enjoy it at all. So having had, after we split the band, we had 2.5 years doing other things, as they say. Chris and I having a fabulously unsuccessful solo career together. And it really wasn't our intention to reform the band at all, but we did a charity gig at a pub in South London, which I asked everyone in Sweden if they fancied doing it just for the fun of it, and that really was the intention behind it. But we did the gig and enjoyed it to the point where we thought, well, this is silly, we really should get back together again. Which I'm aware, some people will see as a sort of desperate move by people who hadn't done anything in the intervening time since the band. But that's not the case, so I'm happy with that. We decided to record an album as soon as possible. Went in, recorded it, released it, toured behind it. It did nothing. So we thought, well, we'll do another one, but we'll do it a bit differently. Which we did. For Babylon and On, we recorded most of the tracks live in the studio, or as live as could possibly be, which is the way that this band works together best, I think, as opposed to overdubbing things. Because we've played together for a long time, we've got a sort of band feel, and it really just communicates what we're about a lot better, because it's more spontaneous and less involved, tricky.
We rehearsed for a couple of months and recorded virtually all of it live. So I think, as Glenn has already said, that it's the best way to capture the band is to capture us live. As anybody who's seen us live will tell you.
Right. When I was at the concert on Friday, I noticed that you had some spectacular aerobics performances out of the audience. I mean, where did that all come out of? What was that all about?
This is over to Glenn, I think.
Okay, Glenn.
Well, God knows where it came about, actually. It's one of these sort of things that evolves out of nowhere without you really thinking about it. You do it one night and then suddenly you realise that it might be a good idea to do it on another night as well. And the reason for doing it changes, and seeing as we were in Los Angeles, home of aerobics, I thought it might be a good idea to perhaps incorporate that into the show and get everybody's pulse rates and heartbeats up, and perhaps, prevent a visit to their local physician.
Will you just explain what actually happened for the people who didn't see it?
Okay, for those who didn't see the show in LA, and I expect there might be quite a few of you there, there's a point in the show at which we play these musical stabs, like sort of James Brown type things. The whole band goes bump, 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 like that. And I asked the audience to jump up and down the appropriate amount of times. We went up to 49 jumps, seeing 6,000 people jump up and down 49 times. It's quite an impressive sight, I can tell you.
Meanwhile, we have people going through the crowd picking up credit cards that are falling out of people's pockets. So we're pretty shrewd chaps, really.
That's awful. But that isn't the only choice to the audience, is it? Because they didn't do that in New York, did they? What did they choose to do in New York?
Oh, the glorious four-part harmony sing-along. No, it's just the same. During the same song, I think it's important to offer an audience a choice of what to do. And I'm always very careful to point out, because I speak as a person who likes to go to concerts and sit down and enjoy it. I'm not one of the people that I'd like to see at my gig, for instance. But always offer people the option of just sitting down and enjoying it, or perhaps having a bit of a sing or a bit of a dance if they like. And we've arrived at, just in the last couple of weeks, having a bit of a debate with the audience and getting them to vote one way or the other. So in New York, they went for a four-part harmony. Didn't feel like jumping up and down. LA was more into, as I say, fitness culture, so they were jumping up and down.
8, 5, 3, 5, 9, 3, 7.
It's one of the few songs that Glenn and I have written in the same room together. We usually write completely independently.
Right.
And Glenn had a tape of his answer phone that he had once upon a time, and we were running through different ideas, and he played it, and we both thought it might make a good start for a song. So we wrote the idea from from that little germ.
And interestingly enough, that number was my number in London. It's now not anybody's number. It's not anybody's number in New York, but if you dial 853-5937 out here, what you get is the time, which I found absolutely intriguing. I mean, what an obscure number to have the time on. Why not TINE or something?
What plans for the future? What's going to happen next year?
I think we're probably going to be splitting up next year.
Surely not.
Not before we do our farewell tour. We'll have various personal conflicts, which will be conducted in the pages of the national and the music press, and perhaps on TV as well. Probably a bitter court battle between us to try and get as much royalties out of each other as possible. And then we'll be looking forward to our reunion tour in 1992.